institutionalization can be a great thing, and centralization can also be a great thing, but it comes with a bunch of downsides. There was a period of time in which centralizing resources and creating institutions on all levels made a lot of sense. If you think back to like early post-modernity, let's think about like the 1900s, didn't have the internet, world was not globalized yet. If you wanted to get talent, resources, capital together, you would do something like you would build an organization or an institution that existed in a physical place. This is how Harvard University comes to be or something. Let's bring together all the world's talent in a place. Let's concentrate resources. Kind of downside to that is over time, these things become like very entrenched. They have their own set of broken incentives, which we can get into in a minute. And the world all the while is like changing. You have the internet, you have globalization, you have like, do you really need a physical university to enable people to do great science when you have like all these tools, all this technology to connect people all over the world? And more, the incentives that exist for these institutions are incentives of survival as opposed to progress.
Internet explorers.
I don't know what gets me more pumped up, Josh, the 2 cups of coffee I've had this morning or that lead-in music. I think it's the lead-in music. The coffee is the source of anxiety. The lead-in music is the source of energy. We're back, episode 56 of Internet Explorers, here every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, where we dive into the latest of what is happening out there on the consumer internet. Big week. Ooh. How we feeling, Josh? Are you watching the charts? Are you just watching Bitcoin tease that huge sell wall at 100K?
I mean, I'm definitely checking them. It's impossible not to.
I like watching the wall. The sell wall
100K
just...
waiting room. It's fat. It's fat. Yeah.
It's fat. Yeah, for sure. All right, we're back. We got Josh with his enduring mic problems, but you won't even know. We're trying to figure it out. And of course, we're back with Peace on the screens. So good to have you back on the screens, Peace. So
Godspeed. Oh yeah, good to be back.
What is going on in your world, Josh? What's the latest, my friend?
Man, just a good week. Launched a token this week, so it's always a good week when that happens. But yeah, like I don't know what every week's just such a blur now. I think we were talking about this earlier, right? Where bull or bear market, kind of slower, kind of building phase. We wake up, take some time to have a coffee, get in front of the computer, and right now it's like you open your eyes, and the second you open your eyes, it's like I got to see what happened overnight. Has Bitcoin done something crazy? Are we back to 80? Are we at 150? So it's a lot of that. It was a lot of that.
Yeah. I started meditating again, Josh, because of that specific thing. I don't think the pure cortisol to the brain the second you open your eyes is actually like the best thing for anybody. We'll see how that goes. Seems to be a consistent thing as I talk to builders too, or the idea of how do we go and continue to show up given the intensity and everything. So I think that's an interesting conversation to have. But yeah, I also just love this idea of how much easier it is for tokens to get launched. It's probably what's contributing to this whole anxiety on many sides. But like going from what's the funniest 17 words you can put together for Farcaster and launching a Warpcaster token using Clanker by Proxy and team that we had on last week in literally an afternoon. And this seems to be more like the world we're walking into. But I'm excited actually today to kind of get into a bit of a new topic. I think we've been so interested in and believe that the importance of playing around with the speculative side of crypto, the attention generating side. And clearly for the last while, that has been meme coins, that has been AI agents. And oh my God, is there just continue to be a ton of excitement there. I'm sure we'll talk a bit about that a little. Yeah, we got the AI 16Z drama a little bit later here. But I feel like there's just this increased desire from folks for something to believe in. And, I think we're seeing DeSci kind of be the category that kind of raises into that thing, seeing some big deals that Binance has done. And that's really why they're interested in them, is they're interested in things that feel a little bit less speculative and can have a longer term impact. But it's also this big, juicy category that I honestly, I think, and we'll talk to our guest Tyler today about this, have been kind of taken the under on a little bit because it feels like it's making a ton of promises. It just feels very unlikely for it to keep. But I'm excited that we have Tyler. I always say gelato because I want to say gelato, but I know it's a gelato. Let's bring Tyler on up here. He can correct me on the pronunciation of his last name. Gelato, just because you're sweet and it's colorful.
It's gelato, and you're just like triggering my grade school bullying days. Oh, and you're also going to be depressed to learn that like DeSci, it's actually all meme coins. So
no, that's not. That's I'm like, no, yeah, that doesn't make me depressed. I think like what happens after this. So yeah, I mean, Tyler, why don't you give the brief intro because you'll do it far better than I will, and then I think that'll set the context for why you are the perfect person for us to have this conversation with.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I'm super thrilled to be here. I'm Tyler. I'm currently building something called Triplicate, which is a new kind of investment collective focused on the deinstitutionalization of science, kind of born out of the broader DeSci space, but I think we can get into that in a minute. Founded Molecule Bioprotocol, co-founded Molecule Bioprotocol, and VitaDAO. So three projects that are kind of at the, I think, forefront of the DeSci space at the moment. Prior to that was working as a biochemist and molecular biologist in biogerontology, which is the science of aging, was at the National Institute on Aging. And before that was working on experimental therapeutics at Columbia University. So had like a kind of mixed career that I would say went from kind of like academic drug development to a government laboratory doing research on the basic science and translational side. And then, 7 years ago, kind of began building up what were, I think, the initial pillars of the DeSci space, which is now kind of much broader and kind of this holistic movement that you're kind of seeing explode, I think, just in the past couple of weeks from a narrative perspective in crypto.
Can you sort of give us like what is wrong? You use the word deinstitutionalization of science. Why does that matter? Like, why is that important right now? Intuitively, I get it, but like you seem a lot closer to it than I am.
Yeah, I mean, I think institutionalization can be a great thing, and centralization can also be a great thing, but it comes with a bunch of downsides. So, like the how I think about this in my current model is that like there was a period of time in which centralizing resources and creating institutions on all levels, not just in science, made a lot of sense. So if you think back to like early post-modernity, let's think about like the 1900s, didn't have the internet. World was not globalized yet. If you wanted to get talent, resources, capital together, you would do something like you would build an organization or an institution that existed in a physical place. This is how Harvard University comes to be or something. Let's bring together all the world's talent in a place. Let's concentrate resources so that we can do things like build a Manhattan Project or send someone to space. Things that were kind of huge Herculean challenges. The kind of downside to that is over time these things become like very entrenched. They have their own set of broken incentives, which we can get into in a minute. And the world all the while is like changing. You have the internet, you have globalization, you have like, do you really need a physical university to enable people to do great science when you have like all these tools, all this technology to connect people all over the world? And more, the incentives that exist for these institutions are incentives of survival as opposed to progress. So the way I think about it is like, and this is also why I'm interested in crypto. I think it comes down to like incentive engineering. If you look at, a scientist that's working in an academic lab, what are their incentives? Is it to do great science? Not necessarily. It's to like get a high impact paper in a journal that's going to enable them to secure tenure at a university or be able to attract more funding so that they can pay their postdoc. Not necessarily do the thing that they're like curious about or interested in, and not necessarily the thing that they would be best at. And universities operate in the same way. It's for them, the most interesting thing is like they're ranked by the number of research dollars that they can attract. So it's not necessarily about doing the most risky cutting edge science. It's about attracting the most research dollars, which they get from organizations like the NIH, which funds, I think it's like, I don't know the exact statistics, so I want to be careful about speaking it, but Alexei Guzzi from New Science wrote about this actually quite some time ago. It's like the percentage of people like 66 and older that are being funded by the NIH is like, I don't know, 70% plus of their budget. I think it might be less than 2% of people under the age of 30 that are receiving funding. And if you think about like, I don't know, how the tech world looks like when people built their first, big company or created a unicorn, a lot of people are doing their best work in their 20s in some cases. So it's just, long story short, I think broken incentives and want to kind of go back to this world that is more independent philosophers being able to pursue whatever curiosity they have.
I mean, it's like so similar to all the stuff we talk about, Jess, right? Like if you allow people on the internet to determine what's valuable and like remove the gatekeepers of capital and like let people just go build these like weird visions they have outside of the constraints of like these well understood business models that people are willing to fund, like what happens, right? And I think it's kind of just the same question that DeSci is running at, right? Like if you just let people follow their curiosity and people fund things they want to see exist or figure out how to like create speculative games that like offshoot funding towards things that exist, like what happens? And I think it's such a great question to go answer.
Oh, we frozen? Nice. Yeah. So I think there's a reason why we're doing Triplicate with Tyler and crew here, right? I think there is sort of this alignment in high level values here, which is, I think, probably more broadly applicable than even just in this sort of venture or DeSci categories. But you mentioned earlier that there's sort of these pillars that you are sort of focused on here and that are core to, like, maybe you've been working on through other projects in the last little while. Can you maybe articulate what you think like the big opportunities are there, or maybe the infrastructure, the pieces that are going to be essential for this sort of vision to come true?
So
Yeah.
there's like kind of two parts that I would address this in. There's kind of like, what has DeSci focused on historically? And I can give a quick intro to that and also some rationale as to why. So historically, DeSci has been focused on areas where I think it's possible to create a financial incentive with crypto specifically. And this is areas like funding, like intellectual property, licensing, areas that are focused on commercialization as a means of value capture so that you can mobilize people to do things like put money into things they wouldn't have done previously, or incentivize patients to come together to fund something and own the IP in a way that was fundamentally different from how it would work before. I think this is quite interesting because it's more or less an obvious place to create an incentive where you have like a desperate user group and a strong desire. But I'm also interested to think about like how all of that gets integrated into this like much broader technology stack that I'm talking about here in the context of Triplicate as like the future tech stack for doing science. So this is everything from like, yes, you have your decentralized funding layer. You have, intellectual property, transactions that are happening quickly on chain. I have an idea, I get funded, you own a little bit of the IP, I get a kickback if something comes out of it. But beyond that, it's AI agents to be able to go and actually design experiments and form hypotheses and iterate those in the context of DAOs, which are actually at the moment quite capital inefficient and which have a large contributor base that they're paying, which in some cases could probably be fully replaced by agents that are as competent. It's actually figuring out how that layer interfaces with the wet lab in the real world. So it's like it's automation and robotics in cloud laboratories where an agent can actually go on, plug in a series of experiments into a computer. All of a sudden that's linking up with a robotics lab that begins running them. It feeds data back to the agent. All of a sudden there's this kind of closed loop science happening that's going from like interesting idea getting funding, experiment being designed, experiment actually happening both in silico and in the real world. All of these things, all the way through to like how we share data, how we collaborate. I think this is really what DeSci needs to do in order to kind of move from this, what I think is currently a very small percentage of like the kind of overall funding for commercial science that's happening in the world relative to venture, relative to government organizations, to something that is actually kind of creating these tools that enable scientists at every level, everywhere in the world, to actually do great science.
We're sort of in a new infra stage here, or like that DeSci maybe hasn't had its infra stage yet, and that's kind of because I think you're talking about this at a level that feels very different than what I'm hearing in many of like the more popular conversations. Right, these are very much DeSci to me is very much around funding and co-ownership of things, and it always falls short for me, and because I feel like you don't have a go public moment here, really. Maybe you do, but like it seems so dependent on a big company or corporation or government or somebody kind of buying the outputs of
right.
this.
I think the way that DeSci has historically been thinking about the go public moment is like a pharmaceutical company coming in and licensing the drug from a DAO and then having some like big sort of exit. What I'm doing is, I think the way I think about it is, historically people are embedding, they're situating DeSci in a context that is crypto. And people are looking at DeSci with this periphery that is like, how does this make sense with the other verticals that I know in crypto? What I'm trying to do with Triplicate is situating DeSci within the context of science, not necessarily just within the context of crypto. So it's like there's been this infrastructure layer here and this kind of like funding layer that has been created that feels currently for most people when they observe it as like this kind of interesting fringe narrative within crypto. But really the thing that's unlocking is a bunch of use cases for scientists that are not a part of that world, right? And so I think it's really about building bridges. Like it's interesting, so many of these things are like mental models. It's like, how should I think about DeSci? How should I think about an exit? How should I think about X, Y, or Z? I think the thing that we kind of need to focus on for this space to succeed and not just be another narrative in crypto that's hot for a couple of weeks and then that people forget about or that turns into vaporware is figuring out like, what is the kind of magic moment? What is like the Beeple moment where all of a sudden the value creation that happens translates beyond this kind of small narrative bubble into the real world? And in my opinion, it's the only way to do that is by kind of dislocating this from just the context in which it exists in crypto and actually having it embedded within kind of scientific reality and the broader infrastructure.
What do you think that Beeple moment's gonna be? Like, what are we aiming at right now?
There's a couple of things, and there's a couple of things that are close to it already. So I'll name three that are really interesting for me and that I've been following closely. And these are kind of enabled by the broader molecule bio ecosystem, but are also kind of standing on their own as well. So one is a guy building something right now called Long COVID DAO, which is basically, I think, a rather brilliant play. If you think about a DAO, he wants to bring together kind of all of the folks that have kind of suffered from long COVID. It's a huge data set with a wildly varying spectrum of like symptoms, phenotypes, et cetera. Get that data in one place and begin to analyze it, and then actually begin to run like decentralized trials with that data and with this broader community, which is largely being like more or less ignored by the medical establishment. A lot of people are like, this is just some sort of like post-viral chronic fatigue. Maybe it is, by the way, but it still needs to be addressed. So this is like, one of those cases where I think it's going to be like collective action that is being ignored by the status quo, then being translated into something where that group is actually able to have an impact. Another one is HairDAO. They've patented their first compounds. This is basically a couple of guys who are like,
I'm a client.
Yeah, no, I think, you and I, like, we desperately need to preserve. Like, these guys are like, both suffered from hair loss, super passionate about it, basically built a Discord community that is like, has a ton of people actively experimenting with themselves, with treatments. They have a lab in New York now that they've got with money that they've raised through HairDAO. And they have basically like working with some of the best hair researchers in the world, patenting their own therapeutics. They raised more money to put towards developing a treatment for hair loss than the entire global R&D spend on hair loss, which is incredible when you think about it. Yeah, it's
wild.
No, now, what's that worth? Hold on, what number are we talking about?
Now, I don't think it's not that much.
Okay, yeah, it's not wondering.
The global spend on hair loss R&D is actually rather low, which is, I think, in some ways surprising, but I think it's largely because it's like a cosmetic commercial endeavor that insurance companies don't pay for, and so a lot of people aren't incentivized to spend a lot of money on it. But anyway, these guys are going to do something incredible. They already are. And the last one is there's this guy, Ethan Perlman, who has what I think is called Curetopia. It's a new DAO that's about to launch. He's been working in the rare disease space for a long time. And I think rare disease is one of the areas. It's like primed for DeSci. So you have a bunch of patients that are, parents of children that the medical establishment isn't really able to offer a solution for. Bring those people together, have them fund early research at universities, where there's interest, but there's not the kind of commercial side, and where like the profit, quote unquote, is just kind of, positive outcomes for society. So I think there's going to be these like, it's the areas that pharma is probably not going after aggressively. It's the areas that are kind of traditionally underfunded, but where through collective action, you would be able to have an impact. This is where I see the kind of Beeple moment. At the same time, there's people, there's like things happening where, Molecule is doing this thing called pump.fun right now, which is like actually an insane experiment. I was rather anti this initially, I'll be honest. Like this is not actually super my cup of tea, just because it's like it's very degen, and which I also respect, but basically it's like they have this company Tract Bio where they have a laboratory where they have these chambers that contain flies. They give two different longevity drugs and a control to these different chambers, and they look at the effects that the drug has on the fly. So looking at like overall survival and activity. And this cam is actually tracking like the movement of each of these flies. And then it's like a prediction market for which is going to be the better longevity compound. They launched these as compounds on initially pump.fun. And I think it did the two longevity compounds did like over $1 billion in volume last week. Like they were like two of like it's Riff and Euro. I mean, this is the most like gigabrain crypto science. Like I have to say, it's actually the team, because it is brilliant, but it's also like, for me, it's like a, I don't know, some type of like hallucination you would have while doing DMT or something. Like it just feels like a corner of the internet type of.
It's a great sign.
Like, yeah.
It's actually
Gwern wrote about like it was like perpetual markets for longevity like compounds, and like kind of like betting on like mice survival. So it's not that far-fetched, but sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
No, I was just going to say, so I think Nima shared this with us. Jess and I were like in a cab in Singapore, and we were both like, this is the dumbest thing we've ever heard in our life. And then I was looking at it again this week, and it actually
Yeah,
just kind of made a ton of sense to me.
we mid-curved
I was
it.
like,
We mid-curved
I was like,
shit.
oh shit,
I also heavily
it's
mid-curved
like
it.
it's like hamster races, but like you're betting on the lifespan of worms or something, right? And I think this,
Yeah.
I actually think this idea, like degens just want a speculative game to go play, and it, as long as like there's enough to generate liquidity and attention, like the medium of the game almost doesn't matter. So doing it in a way that like
fully.
creates this kind of like, it's a really crazy narrative. There's like a big like, real world, impact and mission you can get behind, but you can still go play these crazy speculative games where, and you're watching this, like it feels like you're watching,
It's amazing.
Hamster racing. So it's actually,
It's
I don't
like
know,
a
this
trail
week when
cam.
I finally looked into it
Yeah.
closely enough, and it clicked. It clicked to me.
It's
Good trail
beyond
cam.
me. I also heavily mid-curbed it. I mean, my basically like what I would say is like if the money that is generated from this manages to have a real impact in real science, the end justifies the means. I think the risk is, and this is where I've always been a little bit like, not totally sure, is that if culturally it really alienates the user group that we're ultimately interested in, so like academics and scientists who might look at this and be like, okay, you want to do like more like it's just so far on this side of like the culture that I was like a bit concerned, but they pulled it off. It's brilliant execution. It's very gigabrain. It like, and yeah, I also fully mid-curved it.
Well, I think just more optionality is good, right? Like if you're a scientist and hate
100%.
this, then whatever, go another route. But if you're a scientist and are like, oh fuck, I can tap into this like crazy speculative culture and get funding for this crazy idea that I've been wanting to build, and they're gonna watch my trial play out in real time. Like some people are gonna love that.
And more weird experiments is better. Like period. I do believe that.
We all have a choice to make about how we want to confront the uncertainty with which AI, crypto, all these things are bringing to the world, right? And I think 100%. The only way I see to approach that is to embrace it, not thinking that any one thing is necessarily the thing, but if you're not engaged at the edges, in the trenches, if you will, you're probably going to have a bad time. And I think, or you ever begin to become the Luddite and be against it. And I think the cost of that is massive, right? And so I'm hopeful that leads to more openness to experimentation. But what I wanted to say was like, it almost doesn't matter what those folks think, because if this works, and the reality is we're going to have to engage with more weird stuff to push stuff forward. So I think, I dig it. And I think even the addition of the live stream here, it feels far more complete than at the launch. And I feel like, what are we, like, crypto is about issuing tokens, selling tokens, being early to the sale tokens, or being on the platform which tokens trade. And that's all of these things are right here. And fees can be pretty meaningful. If $1 billion worth of volume is no joke.
Not trivial.
Like,
100%.
money, right?
I mean, it's also like the execution for like an app or a product in crypto is also like, I'm really impressed. You know what I mean? It's like, this is like a whole end-to-end product, going from like a real physical laboratory that is running these fly experiments with longevity drugs that are being provided, through to tokens that are being on Solana. Like that is like the wildest kind of supply chain. Like it's ridiculous. Like, but it's really cool.
I think closing the loop is going to be the most important thing as we move into this next phase. And I describe that as like, okay, great, I've got your attention and I've got your belief, but what is the piece that gives longevity to this thing? And so let's call that a business model or a mechanism that gives some confidence. And I think, I just think that the market is going to become the further we go, it's just these yo-yos, right? The further we go into pure attention and speculation and the PvP games that get played there, the deeper, the more meaningful something that you actually believe in can kind of manifest in or land in your life. And I really see that as like, and I think the bar is actually very low for closing that loop. I don't think it is like it needs to be the most elegant crypto primitive ever. I think
100%.
This is going to exist forever because it's got revenues coming through, it's got trading fees, or it's having an impact, or result that closing the loop becomes the important thing. And I think that's what they've done very well here.
I think the thing that's fundamentally changed in my world model, and again, this is, I think, comes from like, I have a history of like mid-curving some of these things, but it's like, attention is very valuable. And what you do with that attention can actually catalyze a bunch of things that are entirely unrelated and much more valuable than the thing that you're leveraging to get the attention in the first place. And so like, I have probably underappreciated that historically, to the extent that it's prevented me from maybe being more bullish on like some of the things that like I could have enabled at an earlier point, and have been much more focused on like, where's the drug coming to market and things like this.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see, like, if in the end this creates enough, capital to then actually do something meaningful for like the translation of the drug, then power to it. It's actually a much more creative mechanism.
So I think
like we just
go for it. No.
I was going to ask, I'm curious on, so, Vita DAO, the COVID longevity DAO, I'm curious if these, like, if the right way to think about these like funding DAOs are more of like science public goods, or if there's actually just huge like value capture commercial opportunities there. Like, how does that, like, is Vita DAO going to become, they're going to become a brand and produce products? And yeah, can you just like
they already have a product. So okay. I mean, it's pretty wild. They have funded, I don't know exactly the number, but probably upwards of 20 pretty high impact projects at universities with like high caliber scientists. They own that as an IP portfolio. Some of those projects are now intellectual property tokens that are basically trading on the market, and data is being released from these projects. So imagine you have like this kind of continuous fundraising mechanism combined with a very transparent, hopefully transparent market where there's like low latency between like details of project coming out and how the token reacts. Vita RNA and Vita Fast are two examples of this. So like things that it incubated and then it launches the token, and it maintains ownership in this as well, which creates some kind of model for sustainability. It's also just created its first longevity supplement, which it released at DevCon, which is actually approved by the Thai FDA. It was really interesting. So, and they have this, and if you think about distribution, they have this huge community of token holders. So I think it's actually something rather new where you're seeing like an end-to-end from funding of research through to development of products kind of approach. And within that, they also have some things are going to supplements because that's kind of a fast track way to almost like sidestep the FDA. Now, these are, medications that we need to be approved by the FDA in some cases. So I think it's like a spermidine supplement or something like this. But, for the things where aging has historically been, the reason it's very difficult to develop therapeutics for aging is because aging is not considered an indication by the FDA. You can't actually run a clinical trial where the endpoint is aging. This is something that's been, people have been trying to change for a long time. And there's like a big regulatory arbitrage opportunity there. I think one of the things that they're trying to do is, have this wide kind of number of shots on goal, which is like they're funding some fellows, they're funding early stage research. Pfizer invested. They're trying to figure out a way to like license a drug to Pfizer. They're also creating supplements. They have this community they can distribute to. They have people they can gather data to. So it's actually a really compelling, interesting structure. I think the DAOs are like, they're at the forefront of this. I think a lot of people radically underestimate what these things have actually done to date, because I think there is, my experience in crypto is there is so much narrative that when I would hear something like this, my initial reaction as like a scientist would be like, yeah, sure. Like, absolutely, right. That's what they're doing. But, they have a pretty insane community of high signal people that are doing pretty incredible things. And yeah, I think we're already seeing that bear fruit. I mean, this organization is, what is it, 4 years old, 3.5 years old? It's not like, that's a short amount of time in the context of like drug development, where you're typically looking at
institution building,
10-year cycle, 100%.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so Triplicate, I think you just did your first investment is it the first investment in Amino Chain?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe do you want to maybe talk about that investment and then maybe lead into like what types of projects and founders you want to be talking to?
100%. So Casper is a killer founder at Amino Chain. I think they're basically doing like Web3 for biobanking. So there's this whole industry behind the scenes that is providing, that deals with the handling of like medical samples and all of the different components. This is like a complex universe that I'm not going to go into super deep detail on explaining. But ultimately, I think the most interesting use case to talk about is like the most famous. Henrietta Lacks was a woman from whom this kind of sample was derived. We call them HeLa cells. We use them in the lab all the time. They're basically, they were derived from her cancer. And I think it's like the amount of biomass that has been created from her samples is like, there's a book written about this called, I think it's maybe The Impossible Life of Henrietta Lacks, something like this. I could actually be butchering the title. It might be a bit different. But basically her family has been fighting for a long time to actually reap some reward or some benefit from the fact that like medical research for the past 50, 60, 70 years has basically been using this person's physical cells and like biomaterial without ever seeing any sort of upside, any sort of kickback. And so people are donating blood, they're donating samples, tissues being used, and there's also pretty active marketplace for these things, and they've basically seen that there's like a huge gap in the market for actually having some level of like traceable ownership, having some level of like economy, circular economy that can be created for people who are actually providing this material. I think it's the type of Web3 use case you wouldn't see unless you're the rare type of person who's been like deep in that world and exposed to crypto, of which I think there are like, it's probably 10 people, you know what I mean? So when you think about like, I always think about, like, I was reading something about Alexei Guzzi, also from New Science, posted the other day. I think it was him. It was an article he wrote a long time ago, which is like, why is there only one Elon Musk? And it was like, okay, you need to be like 99 percentile energy. You need to be 99 percentile intelligence. You need to be 99 percentile luck. You need to be 99 percentile persistence. If you actually do the math, statistically, you end up with like 1 out of 8 billion people who like fits this role, right? And so when I was thinking about Casper and his background, it's just sometimes you meet this like unique founder where you're like, okay, this is like the only person who is probably able to build this and do it well. Give a really killer talk at DeSci Berlin, and yeah, they ended up raising around with A16 leading. I think it was A16's first DeSci investment, and we were I think lucky to get in pretty late, which I was really excited about. And I think these guys are going to crush it. They have already a pretty wide distribution network. They have a lot of partnerships signed. It's pretty impressive. Yeah, the extent to which they're making progress super quickly. Built MVP like really quickly with no money, like just one of those teams that like ship. And so just see it, love to support it.
Love it. Yeah. So okay, triplicate.xyz is that's the URL, or am I getting that wrong?
Yeah, triplicate.xyz, exactly.
All right. So if you're interested, or you're building in this space, or you know somebody's building the space, I mean, clearly from this conversation, it's obvious that Tyler's a guy you want to talk to here. Tyler, we're extremely excited to have you working with the C Club ecosystem more broadly on this. And I think my belief or sort of vision of where this goes just continues to grow every single time we chat. And I think the alignment with what we care about here at C Club, this idea that you can use crypto to turn social, cultural, intellectual capital into actual capital that you can go invest in the future, is just so aligned. And the world is going to be better with more of this stuff in it. So thank you for the work you're doing. Very excited for the journey that you're on here. And I just recommend anybody, if you're interested in this, you're looking for a little bit more something to believe in, this is probably a category that could be aligned for you. And Tyler's a great guy to chat with. So let's get his Twitter up here again too, so we can go give him some more follows. And yeah, man, is there anything else you want to say before we let you go back to your vacation?
No, just really, really appreciate the support and super amped to work with you guys. So yeah, thanks for seeing the vision, and hopefully this is just the beginning.
Right on, man. Cheers.
Peace, dude.
Cheers.
Yeah, he's so fucking smart, man. But he's got what the?
I got DeSci pilled this morning. Actually, like looking into it in earnest for really the first time.
Yeah.
It was kind of easy. It was kind of easy to. I think a lot of the DeSci stuff came out of the DAO cycle, where they're just like huge promises and kind of like no follow through execution. So I think it kind of got grouped in with that. But no, it's cool.
Yeah, I think I love that I'm getting Peace Node yawns in my audio.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. The truth is I'm like actually amped up. I'm having like thoughts at 1,000,000 miles an hour, where like just seeing the real-time footage of these experiments is such a funny crossover of early internet things. Seeing the like teams, I'm like, man, so if we want these things funded, like why don't we just play in the cultural modalities of like successful industry in North America? So just like blow it out, be the NFL, be college football, like get jerseys, get teams, allow people to do sports betting, televise the events, throw a fucking real big one, get some parades kicking out. Man, people are going to love this. We're going to be watching Worms on cable.
It's true. It's true though, right? It's fucking so true.
It's true. Who the hell's watching anything on cable? But yes, point taken, Peace. I get you.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to. Yeah, you got to play the attention.
Twitch.
You got to play the attention games of today and direct them at things that matter. And I think Andrew, I'm blanking on his last name, also kind of talked about the idea of kind of building like a pump.fun for charity. And I think it's another like very interesting idea with probably real legs. Like really the only question is like, can you actually go develop a speculative game and get enough attention that people want to go play that game there? And if you do, kind of offshooting some capital from that game towards worthy causes is actually like pretty easy and trivial. Obviously, sustainability is a question, like how long do people want to play these games for? Can you actually create real value out of it? But
yeah, I mean, the search for new mechanisms continues, and the rapid reapplication of mechanisms to various different categories, etc., I think is a very good thing, and it'll, you know, we'll quickly find out where there's legs, etc. So yeah, I think it's super interesting. I mean, this is a heck of a lot more interesting than you know, pump.fun on base. You know, like there's actually
100%.
some meaningful there, and I do think that, you know, when you talk to folks who have been around crypto for a while, I think it often gets framed as like, you know, you're pro speculation or not, or you're a degen or you're not. I think it's just like it's a timeline thing, right? I think like speculation is what brings most people into crypto at whatever level, whether it was ICOs, that was NFTs, that was meme coins. But a meaningful percentage of those people then understand, oh, there's a new world here that could be built. And I think the smartest of them are trying to go build those that, you know, can last and sustain for a long time. And I think that's just like a hell of a lot harder to do than just playing the short-term speculation game. And so, but I think there's a deep desire for it. And I think that is what's, you know, again, bringing more interest to DeSci today. And I think it's, you know, a place like you build something people want to be a part of. You want to build a cult of some sort. There's, you know, you need to have some sense of longevity around this.
Yeah. I mean, speculation has always driven the innovation on these things, right? Like pharmaceutical stocks are some of the most volatile on the stock market because people are betting on these companies finding new breakthrough compounds and commercializing them and whatever. It's like, you know, mining companies, right? And we're just seeing, obviously, when you let anyone in the world participate in this speculative game in this network permissionless way, it's going to be way more volatile and look way fucking crazier than the stock market does. But I think also like the value you can get from that is hopefully going to be way larger.
Yeah. All right. Let's. I feel like this is a topic we'll keep coming back to, and we'll definitely bring Tyler back on as other sort of new and interesting things start to emerge, because I think we're still pretty early, but it's very exciting.
Yeah. Maybe last point is just the Z Prime wrote a good kind of breakdown of their thesis in DeSci. I think they've been pretty active there as well, so recommend reading that. It's what Pete has up right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna pin it in the chat. It's
nice.
Pretty fun read. They're calling Michael Faraday a degen. It's good stuff.
He was
solid cage, right? Solid cage.
I like it. Yeah.
Big cage guy.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's jump to distribution for software. So this is actually a term that Nicholas on our team has just been using a lot. I think, you know, he's obviously been very active in Farcaster. I think as soon as Frames came out, he started talking about this idea of distribution for software. And, you know, as we kind of conceptualize a bunch of products that we want to go build and play with, he's always like, okay, what's like the distribution first kind of MVP version of this thing that we can get into market? And I think this week just, you know, relearned how powerful that idea actually is. And I think really at the core, it's like, you know, the old world of creating value was, you know, how do you aggregate attention and retain attention onto a single platform? So it's like, how do I go advertise on TikTok? How do I go advertise on Twitter and pull people into my platform and retain them there? And this idea of like distribution for software is actually like, sure, I have a platform, but it's very secondary. Like really the question is like, how do I push my product as much as possible into these social contexts and distribution channels that already exist? And I think two things this week that I think just kind of highlighted the power of that. One is we had Proxy Studio who built Clanker on last week. I've launched a bunch of tokens fucking around on like pump.fun and fucking around on WoW, and launched one on Clanker this week. And I think it just like the ease of it getting attention is so much higher when you're doing it in the social context that exists, where your reputation is kind of built into it. People are replying, they're retweeting, they're like all of these kind of like viral inducing behaviors existing in the place of the token launch just actually sets these things up for way more success. And you're sure Clanker has a platform, but it's not the point. Like the point is having tons of people in context replying to like mimetically powerful tweets and launching tokens from them. You know, bots launching their own tokens, because bots can be these like first party citizens on Farcaster. So kind of just like had a very like real experience with the power of that this week. And then I think the second one is looking at Anon and Anon cast that kind of went crazy this week. And it's another idea, right? Like I think if you scroll this feed, it feels like Yik Yak may have felt back in the day, except they're building in this very distribution first way, where the point is actually to have this community that's like collectively curating the best anonymous posts and then distributing those as virally as possible to Warpcast and to Twitter and they have some cool like ZK tech where you can, anonymously prove how much anon you have and kind of participate in this thing. But I think it's just starting to see these examples and like comparing them to, these like platform-based approaches of, the old world, and these kind of distribution first opportunities that exist now. It just continues to be really interesting to me.
Yeah, I think we explored this through Enjoy. I think exploring it through Clanker, etc. And I think to me it comes back to the primary reason tokens are valuable or powerful. Like they're great attention generating machines and have the promise of being value capture machines. And I think the value capture machines have been the weakest part of most of these, like the vast majority. But I think you can put those two things together, it gets really interesting. I think the challenge is sometimes I think to me distribution for software is this idea of it just feels very well suited to this agentic world, right? Like it's almost like the limiting factor of us growing up using a screen and a UX as sort of like the main point in which you're engaging with things. I think makes it hard for us to fully grok what agent to agent information flow or user experience would look like. And if you look at Clanker, you're like, okay, well, maybe that's it. Maybe that's an early example of it. But I think it can get pretty weird in many ways. And maybe I'd even make an argument that AI16Z is a version of this, right? Like they're really the choice to build as an open source, the choice to launch, on pump.fun to get a whole bunch of attention early on, the value of attention as like the most valuable thing. I think that's what Tyler was talking about earlier. Clearly, we believe that as well. And so they sort of maximizing the touch points and the value you have in these various networks is key. And if we look at the social landscape or like the media landscape right now, we actually are sort of in an expansion phase, which has not been the case for the last 15 years, really, right? Where we have Threads and we have Blue Sky and we have Lens and we have Warpcast and so there's even this practical challenge of if you are going to go build something and you need to go be relevant to all these different places, it's hard to go do that in an effective way. And so I think frames, that's probably like the why I'm so bullish on open social. I think there's a lot of challenges to it, but if we can go have a media network that is programmable and that we have faith in over the long term, it just seems like such a big thing. So I think distribution for software and sort of open social Web3 social networks are kind of tied together as far as their futures. So I think it's interesting.
Totally.
I think maybe are meme coins distribution. I mean, like if you go bonk and the trading bot, like
for sure they are. Yeah, and I think even with Enjoy, like
hardware.
A core part of the thing a core part of the thing we wanted to go explore is like the social distribution of tokens, but the social distribution of software is like probably like the next phase of this, right?
Yeah. Well, what a good lead into this. Good luck.
Perfect lead into moats in the age of AI. So I think we had a couple conversations in the last week that just kind of highlighted how like fucking challenging of a world we exist in right now for both for founders and investors. I think one of those was we were talking to Mike Maples, and he was like, in my early investing days, it was like shooting fish in a barrel. Like you literally would have this is a direct quote. You literally would have had to try to not make money. And then, through our conversation with him, you can just like him trying to make sense of the opportunity in today's world with just, you have these massive, distribution channels that are just owning attention. So you kind of have to go play there. You have, startup building has kind of become this like cultural phenomenon that like everyone is doing. So you have orders of magnitude more competition. And then now we have AI coming where creating software is becoming easier and easier and easier. It's like how do you underwrite opportunities in this world? And then I think you had another conversation this week where someone was like, pretty quickly, like a very reasonable thing to go do is like, aggregate a killer go-to-market team and then just watch the like YC demo day and just front run all of the opportunities.
No, it was the tweet was like, killer product team empowered by AI, or product and go-to-market team empowered by AI. Watch to see who gets accepted into Y Combinator and front run them all, or front run the most interesting ones. And this was talking with a very prominent investor, and it also came on the heels of him sharing two products that looked exactly the same, and that we had just been pitched something very similar the day before. And you're seeing like the speed of which these sort of memes catch on and builder energy goes towards it. And I think it feels very early and foggy, but an example of what the world is going to look like. And I think this is actually a big big deal, right? Like I'm not sure like if there's a billion venture funds, if that's ultimately a good thing for the venture market. I think that's kind of what the venture market has suffered from over the last little while. And I think if it's hard to sort of pull out or underwrite somebody have a breakout success, it's also hard to kind of put venture dollars into it. And then of course we also have this dynamic that's happening in crypto right now, where the number of teams that we're here come back from a lot of the prominent VCs out there, ones that you know and love, saying, listen, we're not doing private deals right now, we're only doing late stage tokens because that's the best thing for our LPs. Well, great, but it's like not good for innovation. It's not good for builders. It's not the type of investor I want to be, and so but I get it. If you've taken sort of the firm like approach and you're have $100+ million fund and you have to go hit these big home runs and stuff $2 million into each deal you do, that is a very, very, very hard place to be. And so it's definitely not a wrong thing for those to do. I just think it's like a less good for the world thing. And so it's just going to be pretty messy. And then I was even talking to a founder this morning who's got a really great idea. And I was like, listen, here's the challenge. We're going to go build this. Like, we will go build this. If we're able to go reach our goals and we get attention and stuff like that, it's going to be pretty negligible for us to go build this. And so you either have to go break out and capture like a category here, or you're going to be infrastructure, and you should set yourself up to be infrastructure. And we'd much rather pay you to go do something way better than us build it ourselves. And so you're going to have this sort of dynamic, I think, that existed that looked a lot more like Facebook buying WhatsApp and Instagram and stuff, because they have the business model and the killer amount of attention that can just make these things work. And I think Joey actually wrote a really good post from Backdrop. He was talking about distribution over, maybe you can bring it up. He says one of his more recent ones. But just talking about the power of attention and distribution as a platform over capital or over, social connections. Joey DeBruin.
Thank you.
DeBruin.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think it's like Jade.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go. The next Bell Labs won't need a cash cow; it'll need a distribution cow. And so Joey's these guys are building. They have a robo agency there, taking products to market. It's faster, 10x cheaper. We're working with them right now on something fun. And I think this is the intuition that we have as well, right? Like, if you're not owning distribution, and I think that the question is, what does owning distribution mean in a world where you still have like a few big networks that control true attention and distribution? And in my mind, it's this where build something people want to be a part of really lands. And it's why hearing what Tyler's talking about in the edges of DeSci is very exciting. It's like, yeah, if you have long COVID, you give a shit about long COVID DAO. And now that is maybe not sufficient for a ton of value to be created, but it sure as hell a good start. And I think that's actually exciting to me, because it feels like we have these more small, weird, I won't call it cozy, because I'm not sure I call anything in crypto cozy, but pockets of the internet where there's just more, let's call it diversity. That's maybe a challenging word to use as well, or wildness.
Yeah.
How about antagonistic?
Antagonistic works.
I just mean like, it's like, you can't sit down anywhere here. It's the opposite of cozy. As soon as you sit down, you're poked, and you have to go to the next spot, basically.
Yeah, I think that's a reality for sure. I mean,
I think we're both reading Accelerando right now too, which I think just it captures this idea of just an insanely paced future where nothing really makes sense and you can't really get a grasp on anything really, really well. And it's a confusing one. It's a confusing one to move into. I mean, it's way more fun. It's way more fucking interesting.
I think the challenge is it's very hard for somebody. Like, I mean, I really have to acknowledge the privilege that we have to not be worrying about, like our careers are truly about playing in this world, and there's no doubt there's risk associated with it and all that sort of stuff. But I think if you imagine what starting your career today would look like you have to be so high agency, you have to be playing these edges. It's new and novel. It's only going to matter. The sort of longevity of these things are going to be shorter and shorter. But you also have this like potential, like the uncapped upside is huge, and you can realize almost way faster in many ways. So
totally,
yeah, fascinating.
I mean, I think the silver lining is that I think for the first time, things that are the line that I say a lot, where something with like 1,000 like true fans and 10,000 true speculators can actually be this like wildly valuable network with crypto. Not like, it's harder to see where like the huge like social platform opportunities are, but it's also actually pretty easy to see how you can go serve a niche really well and go build something pretty valuable with a lot of transaction volume and capturing a ton of value, which we see every day in crypto.
Yeah, worth a read here for Joey. We got to get into this normies topic, because this is giving me the EBGBs, brother.
Yeah, I mean, so let's jump into it. So I think everyone knows.
Yeah, there we go. Like, okay.
So I think everyone obviously knows, what's happened with Chill Guy. I think it was, I don't know why it was Chill Guy that was finally like the one to like really go viral on TikTok, but it was. I think, TikTok was just like full of people trying to figure out how to buy it, and Moonshot is just continuing to see like record days. I literally had both my hairdresser and like multiple friends ask me about Chill Guy, which I'm not going to comment on top signals, whatever. Who fucking knows what this market's going to look like? But I think the weird thing is that increasingly normies are here, and already this week we're seeing just some like insane implications of that. Like this kid is one of them. Some of the streams that have happened this week of people just trying to pump meme coins in new fucked up ways is like insane.
This kid is the Gen Z quant kid that dumped a token on the live stream for 20K, and then the community went and pumped it back up to being worth a couple $1 million. Has had his dog kidnapped and ransomed back by what is allegedly somebody who launched their own meme coin and required him to buy a bunch of the meme coin to get his dog back. Not confirmed, but I'm just reading it out for those listening on the podcast. And then the other one was a banana dressed in black, a man painted with blackface dressed in a banana doing a live stream on a token. So it's just like clearly the extremes. It's like 4chan plus tokens is being appealing. And whatever, go do your weird, interesting things, live your life whatsoever. But I mean, it's pretty.
But I mean, I think the crazy thing is the incentive that like a lot of TikTok views or a bunch of YouTube views, creates on like creating really fucked up content is obviously it exists, but it's low. But the promise of like
it's mediated by curation and by AI and by moderation, right?
Totally.
You're getting a very moderated content feed.
But this promise, the promises that people are seeing with like the path to riches of meme coins, and then like the shit that's driving them to do on these live streams is.
Yeah, I think it was pretty clear to us when they launched live streams that was going to be a compelling thing. When we're doing a live stream right now. Part of the value of us doing this live stream is that you just get, I think it's important for people who want to come along on this big vision and journey with us to know who we are, to know how we think, to have touch points, to have trust. And I think live streaming does that quite a bit. But I mean, you're seeing like it, live stream as a category has really always been about doing absurd things. It's like the
right.
idiots doing shit out there just pissing people off, getting arrested in Japan, all this sort of stuff. Those are live streamers because it is such a pure attention game. And how do you get people paying attention? Right now, they're going to pay attention to the weirdest thing. So it's no shock to me that it's kind of kicking off. But here we have Elon from Pump saying yesterday, pump.fun live streams onboarded millions. Today, top pump.fun live streams has more concurrent viewers than all but 3 Kick streams and less than 10 Twitch streams. So, I mean, if that's not a signal that of the distribution or the attention generating power of tokens and the massive impact that's going to have on these. I mean, this is an insight into the potential unseating of incumbent networks in a certain way, right? And it's going to look a little bit different and probably back into this infra. But yeah, it's a big deal. I think, I think that the comments I see around normies coming in is really about, it's very similar to around NFTs, and I think meme coins are just NFTs on steroids, and that these are mostly speculative games that most people get wrecked on. And the floor on these things is literally zero and tiny liquidity, etc. So is this the right thing to bring people in? I think it's just a irrelevant.
It doesn't matter. It's an irrelevant conversation. I mean, I think an interesting conversation is like, what does this do? I guess both, like, what does this do to like public sentiment of crypto in like a couple months or whatever? But then also it's like, people are onboarding into crypto, they're trading tokens for the first time. How do crypto founders and builders now actually go tap into that growing kind of public awareness of it?
Because by just foregoing it, you actually don't even get the chance to have the attention to actually go give your economy a shot at kicking off. And so I was thinking about the hierarchy of launching tokens, and it's like, you launch a token is an opportunity to capture a bunch of attention. The fear people have around launching tokens is like the consistent chart, right? Which is like the thing falling right off. And so like, I was like, okay, well, but I think not enough people are not afraid enough of not getting the pump, right? So if you're launching a token without getting a pump, you're missing out on the core goal. And so like the worst place to be is not getting that attention whatsoever. Actually, the worst place is probably getting that attention and not getting the right funding to be able to sustain through the downside. Right. The second worst is nobody pays attention to you. The third is like, okay, you got a token on the world, nobody got it, but you can maybe build into it. And the first is like, got a ton of attention, it falls off, but you got a bunch of money that can allow you to go build into the next phase.
And we saw, like, we're seeing that with a bunch of these AI projects, right? Who had tokens made for them, but also now a ton of attention and people playing with their products. And yeah, they have some, weird trench stuff to deal with, but maybe better than building in obscurity.
But let's go to that, because I got looped in on this AI-16 drama a little bit, and we're coming up on time.
Okay.
You want to hop ahead to that, or do you want to do checking it
No,
out?
No. We can jump to it. If you got looped in on it, run with it.
Well, I listened to I listened to his.
Okay, nice. I didn't even listen to it, so you probably have more
stream,
context than I do.
Yeah, so AI-16Z is something we've talked about a few times. There's just such an affinity for this, because I just see so much of our intention around Seed Club and them coming at it with like an AI first perspective and meme coin first perspective, and I think it's fascinating. And so they have built this ELIZA framework, which is an incredibly powerful agentic framework, specifically in around crypto business building, I guess I would say. Maybe that's not quite a fair way of characterizing it, but I'm sure y'all have heard of it. We talked about it before. Ran up quite a bit, and then the founder came out and I don't even want to get into it, but there's basically like the core character, the ELIZA character, which is the orange shirted AI-16Z characters. It's sort of like a character that Shaw here has a deep affinity for and belief in, and kind of has a big vision. This guy's coming at it from an AI first perspective, has been building this for a lot longer than it has been a crypto aware, I guess, and has this view of it being kind of a IP and character that's out there. AI-16Z is trying to launch a whole bunch of other agents and support other people launching agents. Somebody else came around and launched one around ELIZA while these guys were actually working on one. Kind of fumbled the bag on how he handled the communications around it, and the project dumped quite a bit. And so he's been on the receiving, Shaw specifically, and their team has been on the receiving end of a whole pile of hate for the last week or so. And yeah, the number of go to jail comments on any one of his, and they didn't handle it super well. There was a dev who I guess had bought one and then dumped one, and made some money off of it. They say it wasn't on purpose, but kind of tough to convince the trenches of others. And so I think this is just like this is why a lot of founders don't want to go build tokens first, is because it's just incredibly hard. And so I think the thing I want to say here is, and if Shaw, if you're listening, I'll send this to you, man. Just keep cooking, brother. Don't worry about these folks. You got something really big here. You're going to get better at the communication things. The only thing that matters is you go ship on the roadmap right now. I look at a guy like Shaw. I think he has all the potential to be an absolutely phenomenal, impactful founder here in crypto. You think about somebody who's being and I don't know, I've never chatted with them. So and though I will say I do own tokens. So like, just FYI, but I guess I just saw him in it and I was like, fuck, I could just see all those comments were from people who had never launched a token in their life. This shit is hard. This stuff is messy. The expectations are crazy. So you're doing a good job, Shaw. Keep at it, bud. There's very clearly that this is the future of DAOs, agents at the core. And it sounds like the ELIZA framework is really far out there in advance, though I think there's some others that are doing some pretty cool things as well. So I just saw a dude, he was doing so hard to try to do right by his community, and the community tell him to go fuck himself. And so I feel like I want to just send some positive vibes towards their team today. This is a big thing to go get right. We already got tattoos happening. Like, let's go.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Those are permanent. So is the blockchain.
Hey, give us one lightning round and let's get out of here.
We've got no lightning round, so let's do one of these bad boys.
All right, what we got?
Why collect digital art? What do you?
I mean, let's just open up the like Joe P's collection from this week.
Oh,
so
man,
really,
this was the first one that made me feel something. And so
yeah. So
Joe
really, what
P's.
this was actually. So Ian Rogers wrote a good post this week on just why collect, and I always like his takes and interest in subcultures and passion for this like very human value transfer between like collectors and creators. So good post, you should read it. But Joe Piece dropped a great, I think 30-piece collection this week, and I was just scrolling through it and it was like, oh, this is such a nice break from fucking meme coins and charts and all this other shit, and just kind of reminded me of this digital art NFT movement that continues chugging along, continues having energy, has a core collector base that continues to care, and it's just a wholesome place compared to some of the other places we hang out.
And I think there was Art Blocks and Marfa happened last week or the week before.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But my take here is like, I'm like, oh right, the great washout of easy money in NFT art has happened, and so only the exceptional are going to survive. And what you're not seeing here is some low effort AI PFP collection here. What you're seeing, this is clearly art. I mean, I guess that's a loaded statement anyways, but that's my takeaway from it.
I like
But
it. I like it too. I like it.
Look
too.
at click on the OpenSea. Like there's real volume, there's real bids here, right? I think there's like
tons
bids on almost everything right now. And so I don't know what the actual auction ended up, but he just did a simple auction on a site. So
like one of them went for 50. They all went for like pretty.
I know.
Pretty
I was like, ooh, it was like 1.8. I'm like, oh, maybe we should bid on it. And I'm like, no, there's too much time left. Come back and look at it. I was like, yeah, I'm not. I can't.
But I think that point's so important because I was looking at art blocks. I was looking at brain drops, and the like instant sellout days of like any collection they drop is well behind us and never coming back. And that's just how art works, right? There's an infinite number of supply.
Well, but I'm not sure that's true because I think it's probably artist by artist. I think the idea that a platform can drop and
fair.
And have that's very different.
Yeah, but like whatever, two years ago, every collection, instant sellout when AI art was this new thing and it was hot. Early days of art blocks, didn't matter what you dropped on there, instant sellout.
Yep. Thank you, art blocks.
Yeah.
Well, this is
checking out my Normies.
I mean, he's been cracking on for years, and it's well.
And he's built a big following. He's it's clearly a thing. So.
Squiggles are doing good though. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I checked. Yeah, they're not doing too bad. I mean, they're doing they're doing as well as ETH is doing. Let's say, consistent.
Yeah, actually, I saw someone in a group chat I'm in shared some data showing like the Bitcoin price in the punks chart, and it's like roughly correlated, right? So it's no surprise that these kind of blue chip asset values came down during this bear market. Crypto wealth effect happens again. These status symbols are going to become more important.
I think that's the thing that people are, you talk about top signals, we talk about, et cetera. This crypto wealth effect is a thing that we should be paying attention to. How many people feel wealthier today than they did yesterday? And what is that tipping point to where they're actually manifest that wealth? And, the early NFT drive was really started back in DeFi summer with people making absurd amounts of money and those big whales coming in were those people who were probably farming, pool 2 6 months ago type thing. And so like that's probably meme coins today. Now I don't know if that we shouldn't say it's going to translate directly into like a resurgence in NFTs, et cetera, but I think it will create, people will go further out on the risk curve or the weirdness curve or on the creativity curve from that. And I think that's going to be I think that's really the sense of optimism that people have in crypto right now is ultimately that. Now if we can just get some of those early 21 VC funds to start distributing capital and we can get the LPs back in and we can get money into early founders again, that'd be great. And I think it's coming. Oh, all right. That was fun. Gentlemen, thanks to Tyler for hanging out and DeSci pilling us. A shout out to Joe here for having a really great drop. Love to see it. And respect to the normies who are coming in. Good luck to them. I wish you well. And to builders out there, I think the time to chase the attention and the latest thing solely is probably behind us. And what we're really looking for is the next 0 to 1 opportunities. I think you hear that in what Tyler's talking about. We're seeing that in a lot of the founders that are coming through our world these days, pushing at new things. Let's leverage the meme coin mania to go building like enduring, lasting institutions here. And I think that's the opportunity I'm most excited about. So,
yeah. I think maybe last thing, we're just to make it like very clear, we're open for business. We're actively investing. We're actively supporting teams. I think we'll probably run some version of another cohort early next year, but we're doing deals right now with early stage consumer teams that are building cool new weird things on real insights.
I'm looking forward to us getting back into talk. Like I feel like we have been very quiet in the last little while, and that's because we're working on something really fucking big. Something that's going to shift something here pretty big, and so I am so excited to actually carve out a big chunk of these shows for us to go deep and to talk to people about this sort of bigger swing that we're going to be taking here pretty soon. But yeah, I think great point. We've got some incredible teams that have come through. We've got an early start on the next batch. If you're building something right now, Josh is the best person for you to reach out and ask around. No better early collaborator on some of the crazy things you're working on than to get Josh in it. So eager to chat, but excited to give a glimpse into the bigger vision that we're building towards it with C Club for the last 4 years. And I think we get this, we're so close to making that tangible and real, and where we don't have to use words to try to convince somebody of it, but we can just say, here, click this link. It's going to feel good.
Taking the Seed Club pill is about to get a lot easier.
Amen. All right, y'all. well over time. Thanks for hanging out with us today. We're back here every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. We got Josh curating the most interesting shit. If you're not following his newsletter, make sure you do. It comes out just after the show and goes into a bunch more detail on some of the things that we just can't get to here. And Peace, always good to have you on the screen.
So much better.
At the very least, get
So much
one laugh
better.
out of me from it. So we'll be back here next Friday. And until then, we'll see you on Chain.